many minutes do we have for the presentation?
It's around 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah. And I will invite you to try to stick to them. So
yes, just to organize myself.
Yeah, of course.
Maybe you had you did write it, but I didn't remember right now. So
no problem at all. Just the idea is the structure, the plan is to have first the three presentations, the three speeches from the guests. Seriously. Okay, perhaps I had a bit of some troubles with the connection.
It's quite often so.
Yeah, it's one of that problem we learned to live with this
in this time
meeting and working from home. Yes. So I was saying that the idea is to have first the three speeches from the guests, from the speakers, and then open the floor for questions and debate. That's why I was reminding you the 15 minutes limit.
Of course.
And can you hear me okay? I think that I had some issues yesterday with my microphone. I was in another meeting and they had to, not yesterday, but the other day, and I had to dial in because my microphone wasn't working. So I decided to put in a bit earlier to check if everything is working okay. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. And it's good to meet you and see you all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I hear a little echoes, so I'd invite to perhaps turn off the microphone, whoever is not talking, so to avoid this echo, this reverb. So I see other people coming in. We are already 5 minutes late on the schedule. That's one of the aspects of the real life meeting that stick with us also in the digital environment. And well, I'll start with a brief introduction. So just to greet everybody and welcome you to this section. The thematic table on smart farming is part of the European Regions for Smart Community Summit. This summit is organized under the Portuguese presidency of the European Union and gathers local and regional leaders, planners, researchers, experts of any kind and different backgrounds to discuss how to co-promote smart communities for a better tomorrow. The summit is organized in collaboration with the Horizon 2020 project Auroral. Auroral is led by the CCDRA Alentejo with the support of, the project is led by the CCDRA Alentejo with the support of other 25 partners. This summit is organized also with the support of Alentejo Europe Initiative, Open and Agile Smart Cities Organization, ADRAL, the Regional Development Agency of Alentejo, and Irradiare Science for Revolution. I am Andrea Gioseffi, and I will be your host for the next couple of hours. I'm Chief Editor of Irradiare, and I will try to moderate and to host this table on smart farming. We all know, we are all more or less knowledge on the idea of smart farming and the fact that digitalization of farming is one of the most prominent features of the European Green Deal, and it has been highlighted under the Farm to Fork strategy as a key to enhance resource efficiency, protect biodiversity, and face all the ever-pressing climate challenges we are living. However, the potential of the new policies to achieve the EU climate and environmental goal depends on how they will be implemented. So how can we turn that ambition into reality, and what roles can the regions and smart community have along this path, also in this smart transition in the farming sector? I see people joining in, keeping on joining in, and I welcome that. I remind all of you to turn off the microphone, so to avoid background noise and echoes. And exactly as Massimo Rocchitai did, use the chat to, to comment and to talk to each other. First, we will have a small, a short 15 minutes speeches from our guests, and then we will open the floor to comment and questions for the open debate. We will discuss how to turn the European policy ambition into reality and what are the new and the most actual aspects and prominent features of smart farming with David Cialetti, that is a research professor at the University of Padua, whose investigation focuses on the long-term determinants of economic development at regional level. I hope I got everything right. We also have Monica Manolova, she's an ecosystem expert for the Digital National Alliance in Bulgaria and is a member of the DIH Agro Hub, always in Bulgaria. She focuses on inclusion, equality, and smart growth for communities. And our third speaker, I believe she is also online, Maria Fatima Duarte, that is Executive Director of CEMBAL, the Centro da Biotecnologia Agricola e Agroalimentar do Alentejo. She coordinates the Bioactive Research Groups and is also an integrated member of MED, the Mediterranean Institute for Agriculture, Environment and Development. Along with us, and with the three speakers that I thank again for their availability. So, along with us, there are two rapporteurs. Davide Murgese, that is a senior consultant at I Tesori della Terra, is expert in agro-system management and food chain sustainability, and Barbara Lalicata, that is a senior specialist in the I believe Davide started to share the screen with it. Okay, it's fine. You will be the first to start So yes, good that you started to, but we can see, I believe, your Outlook in this moment, your email. Yeah, exactly. Now it's quite better. Start to see your screen, your desktop, and yes, your presentation. I was introducing the other rapporteurs in the meanwhile. That is, she is Barbara Lalicata, senior specialist biologist at the Environmental Park in Turin. Tesori della Terra and Envy Park are both partner of Auroral, the H2020 project that is behind the organization of this event. And well, I have already given all the reminder from the technical aspect. We are a few minutes late on our plan, so without further hesitation, I will just leave the floor to David Cialetti, that is already sharing the screen, so to have the speech, please. I believe you are on mute.
Okay. Do you see the screen?
Perfectly.
Perfect. So, so my topic will present some analysis of reflection on how territorial transformations created a certain kind, quite complex, of territory and how this territory can be linked nowadays with transformation both in urban and rural spaces. So we have two basic ideas in my paper. The first is that territory remains in time and its transformations are historically based. So to understand how some kind of transformation occurred is a very important aspect to understand how you can manage territory nowadays. And the second point is that complexity, and you will see this territory, this case story of a part of the Veneto region, how complex it is. Complexity might be a source of problems, but might also be a source of advantages and a source of development. In this sense, farming spaces and rural spaces can have a very important role. So the paper is structured in 4 parts. The first part, I will go quite quickly on it to present some characteristics of the region and the territory we are working on. The second one will analyze the territory, how nowadays territory has been formed in centuries, and what are the consequences of this territorial configuration. And then we will stress, and we'll come to the core of the presentation, so limits, challenges, and potentialities of a very peculiar use of space. And then we will come to conclusions. So here, the area we will analyze, we will work on is this one. So what I call the central Veneto Plains, and the Veneto region is more or less this one with Venice as its capital. I have put here some data, but I will stress on the 3 aspects. So first of all, the quite tense population density, that is theoretically, statistically 268 inhabitants per square kilometers, but in fact, it's much higher because inhabitants are concentrated more or less in half of the regional territory. So this is one important point. Second is the still very active and important role of agriculture in terms of GDP, of regional GDP, and of contribution to the Italian agricultural production in value. And the third aspect is the relevance of tourism. I stress it because what you see it from the data, I stress it because it has a very important impact on territorial use, on the use of territory. Here just a few figures to point out what I have said. Here you have in red the area, in red, rose red, in the area with the higher population density. And you see that it is namely this central Veneto plain we are working in this area, along with the Verona province, but we will not talk about it today. And the second important figure that you see on the right side of the slide is the area of attraction of population in blue or dark blue, and the area from which population is living. So mainly the agricultural area of the southern part, the mountains area, and of the city of Venice that are living, that are losing population. Here you have almost the same figures. And this one on the left side of the slide, I will comment a little bit because it's very important. You have in red cultivated area, and in yellow, so plain yellow, uncultivated, so mountains area or urbanized areas. And you see that in this central part of the region, so the area we are working on, there is a structural mixture outside the cities. You have the city of Padova here and the metropolitan area of Venice here, but outside those cities, agriculture is structurally mixed and juxtaposed with urban and industrialized area. So we come to the second part of our analysis, so the territory. So what territory? We have definition, a very large definition of territory that we have used in our project and study, which combines, of course, material aspects, so urban, rural spaces, landscapes, and the use of territory, with social and economic practices and cultural heritage. So it's a very large definition of territory. The second point that we will see further on is that this territory that we have already seen a little bit, and we will see clear right now, emerges as a long-term adaptation within at least 1 century, but maybe even more, of very old farming structures called as mixed agriculture. So family-based, independent family-based farmers that had some kind of sufficiencies in terms of production and often juxtaposed farming with other works, artisans, eventually industrials, small land ownership, and land ownership that implied also infrastructures as farms, for example. So built spaces and land exploitation. On these structures, we have the economic transformation that were clearly and evident, became clearly and evident in the 50s and the 80s, even if they started before. And this transformations is, in one word, we can call it industrialization, but a very peculiar industrialization where farmers and former farmers acquired a very strong and important role as they themselves industrialized their plots. They used the properties to build in factories, or they transformed farms into factories, dispersing this, this approach dispersed in the industrialization in the territory, and it dispersed also urbanization. So former farmers became central actor molding the regional economy. This deeply shaped the territory, of course, and we will see it. It also created new social and economic practices, and it created a contiguity, a structural contiguity between agricultural and industrialized or urbanized spaces. Here, a few pictures, so we will go quite fast on it, but you see this is an old, on the left side, an old map, and you see this little divided plots with, at the center, constructions, home farms. You see it quite well in this on the right side, in these photographs taken during the Second War. The fields with fruit trees, mulberry trees at their frontiers, and near the fields, homes, farms, and so on, and rural infrastructures. And this created a very strong and persisting contiguity between, and you see it in this photograph, between rural work and industrial work, rural spaces and industrial spaces. The result of this transformation, you see it very clearly in these night photos of the region. The right side, you see, in the right photo, you see the city of Venice and the city of Padua. And in between, you see streets, roads, lanes, buildings, and fields. Another photos that says more or less the same. So you can quite easily concentrate on the last one at the bottom right side of the slides. And you see here transport infrastructures, you see factories, you see urban spaces, and in between fields. A very complex structure. Here are the pictures that say more or less the same thing, but visually it's important to have an evidence of what it is. So diffused industrialization, but also diffused urban areas. Again, a photo from Google Earth. Diffused here is Venice, Porto Marghera, and here is the space between Venice and Padua. Diffused urban areas, diffused rural areas, and diffused industry. So we come to the third part and we go towards conclusion. This is a very complex territory, juxtaposition of rural, industrial, and urban spaces, tense transport net, and therefore traffic, which is a problem, high soil consumption, clear environment threats, and diverse and contrasting needs and aims of its population. But it has also both strong industrial tradition and viable agriculture from an economic point of view, and highly valuable material and immaterial heritage from a social point of view. So it's a complexity that should be managed. And this is our thesis, that should be managed to bring and to enhance benefits. Of course, is a structure that create contradictions and disturbances, smell and noise, slower transport, and we will see it, limits to urban and industrial growth, pollution, but might be also source of mutual benefit if we know how to manage these living spaces. How? And we have some kind of lines for managing, supporting adaptation between farmers and inhabitants, farmers and industrialists, set common objectives, as for example, for the environment. Imagine non-conventional geographic interpretation. So conventional geographic interpretation of a territory sets devised areas for devised activities, but maybe we could approach it not separating areas, but juxtaposing it, stressing coexistence and not separation, and turn conflicts into opportunities. You will see very quickly how you could do it. Of course, you have conflict on the left side when tractors go and drive into small streets, but you can have also opportunities, creating spaces for walking in the green, for enjoying rest. You have conflict when tractors drive near homes, but the same fields can become an opportunities. You have conflicts when intensive breeding is near home, but some kind of breeding, and we will see here how to manage it, can also bring opportunities to inhabitants, giving them valuable and safe food. So conflicts or opportunities in living together, this is the question. And coming to the end of the presentation, the answer we have found in our research is that to solve this situation positively, without erasing agriculture or without stopping urban and industrial development, we should use governance, taking some action for making this coexistence viable and positive within these large areas that we call agropolitana, so agrarian and urban spaces. For example, support short production and distribution chains, so make citizens tangible value of being near farmers. Support sustainable farming and breeding because it's much more impacting than traditional one. It lower nuisance, increase biodiversity, recreating mixed farming because it's a form, again, less impacting on territory and people. Open the fields, let people into the farmers, let people know the farmers and enjoy the green spaces that farming naturally builds. And of course, stop oil consume and support urban farming to make people aware of what farming actually is. In conclusion, a few photographs and references, because those things actually going on, especially in this last year. And I should say that they have been supported by the pandemic to some extent. So bring farmers near people, develop sustainable farming, again, sustainable breeding, mixed farming as a new practice protecting biodiversity, but also opening spaces for people to get into and to get through the fields so they can enjoy the countryside within this big agropolitana, this big city, and support mutual knowledge. People have to go nearer the farmer and to know each other. Those are projects that are actually going on. So it's something concrete, and make the cities greener. This is another example, a very concrete one, of the Parco Agropaesaggistico Urbano di Padova, which is a very big park where farming activities, agricultural activities are set within the city, where people can walk, have rest, but also see how agriculture is And a very interesting example of this process is governance is the diffusion of urban farming, which is also a way to get people nearer to agricultural practices. And here you have this project always in Padova, the so-called Orti Urbani in Italian, but as nothing else as urban farming. So I come to the conclusion. Veneto is this part of the Veneto region, so the central Veneto plain, is a very complex space. If you say it, if you fly to Venice and at a certain point you look down, you will see this uninterrupted sequence of urban industrial services, rural spaces, and you will not see any sense or order in it. And this is one aspect. So complexity, mutual nuisance, even threat for future development. One side. The other side that we have stressed, this agropolitana represent us a base on which build new rural communities and create synergic relation between urban and rural spaces and societies, as the example I have shown you demonstrate. And this might be the way to follow in order to regenerate or recreate a territory that has been also vastly destroyed by urbanization, but still present very important potentialities of coexistence between, namely, urban and rural activities and communities. So I come to, and this is the end. I have put here some references. I haven't put references in the slides, just they were still quite a lot and quite dense, but you can find all the references in these two little books we have published during our research. So thank you very much for your attention. And if you have, of course, any question at the end of our meeting today, I would be very glad to answer to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for this valuable and insightful presentation, and also for sticking to the 15 minutes time. Thank you for both and for all for being here. Now I will give the floor to Monica Manolova. Please, if you willing to share the screen of the presentation, or if you have something to support, or just talk as you feel comfortable.
Of course. Yes, of course. Thank you very much, David, for the wonderful presentation you just did. It is highlighting a number of aspects which I'm interested in as well, including the geographic information systems aspect. To begin with, I would like to say thank you once again to our hosts from Alentejo and from Iradier, who are very kind to invite me here. And I would like to greet all my Eastern Orthodox friends for the Orthodox Easter and Easter Monday, which is today. I'm hugely honored to be a part of this event because I understand its significance and to be included in the Smart Farming Roundtable, which is also incredibly significant since Alentejo is one of the largest actually area in Portugal dealing with agricultural issues. I'm representing here two very significant organizations, one of its kind and first of its kind, Digital Innovations Hub for Agriculture in Bulgaria, AgriHub, which is an organization of 15 different organizations, universities, the scientific community in agriculture in Bulgaria, and of course, private entities, entrepreneurs in the digital sphere, and companies in the digital sphere, and the Digital National Alliance, which is a part of the Digital Skills and Jobs Coalition of the European Union. And I'm extremely proud to represent both these organizations because they are focused on bridging the gaps between the rural and the digital sphere, between different skills and different conditions which are present within the entirety of Europe. In order to continue from the wonderful presentation we just saw, I want to connect the prior topic for urban and rural connectivity and to proceed towards the importance of rural areas within the European Union. These slides represent the current land cover, which is showing the importance of rural areas within the European Union. The rural areas within the European Union actually cover 91% of the entirety of the spaces. So we're focusing our efforts usually on urban areas, while it is rural areas which represent the most significant ecosystem services for us. Our forestries, our traditional agricultural systems, and our waterways are all connected within rural areas. And while urban areas are significant, they're only a part of the fabric of our systems. It is actually the green fabric which connects us that is the most important one. And green land cover represents that fabric very, very well. In fact, the ratio between urban areas and rural areas within green land cover is 2:1 or 3:1, depending on the different classes you're examining. And in here, you can very clearly see how we are connected with the waterways, with the forests, with the agricultural lands, with the food we consume, with the water we drink, and the actual air quality of the air we are breathing. So rural areas have played thus far, and they're going to continue to play within the European context a very significant role, not only because they're the focal points of one of our most significant economic segments, which is the agricultural segment, but because our lives are very connected to the rural areas which we are connected to. Our culture, our heritage, the ways in which we connect to each other are also significant. In that aspect, I would also like to say thank you to my friend Massimo from Sardinia, who managed to connect today. And I know that this is also a huge honor because we're recent friends. And I would like to say thank you once more for being here, because this is an incredibly important part of the future development of the European Union as a whole. I suppose that out of this 90% territorial coverage for rural areas, 39% is agricultural land and farming land, which is 170 million hectares of land, where 10 million agricultural enterprises are employed. And for the skills and digital connectivity of these people, this represents 22 million people that are currently employed in the agricultural sphere in Europe. This is significant because these are also some of the territories which are with the most difficulties in their growth and development, where the paying gaps are significant, where there are difficulties with connectivity to basic services, where people are concerned and mostly affected by climate change. On the upper right corner, you can see a visual which we are used to seeing from the Copernicus monitoring service of weather conditions. This is a recent one from last year, and it represents the fluctuations in temperatures which we are currently getting accustomed to. So very low lows and high highs, which are affecting our rural areas more than they're affecting almost anybody else, because it's the rural areas that are most dependent on the fluctuations in temperature for produce, for traditional agriculture, and for smaller farming areas. The next slide, I have shown the connectivity of a sustainable farm, of smart village, and a stronger region which is growing and developing due to these two aspects of the territory. Now, farming is extremely important, and out of these 170 million hectares that I just mentioned and 10 million agricultural enterprises within Europe, more than 2/3 of them are less than 5 hectares, which means that smaller farms are impacting more significantly our sustainable development goals, and they have even more importance than the larger traditional farming monopolies that we're used to seeing, that are the engines of economic growth for most countries. So it will be extremely important in the upcoming period to be able to include within the growth of the economies of Europe even these smaller farmers who may not have the access to the same financial resources that larger farmers have because of this interesting relation between subsidies received and area covered within the Common Agriculture Policy. So smaller farmers will be affecting their local economies pretty importantly in the coming years. Sustainable farming and smart farming go hand in hand. And I think that the most important aspect which we should be focusing on when it comes to smart farming is to make sure that the smaller farmers in Europe have the access to the same services which are provided to the larger organizations dealing with agriculture. Because currently, within the United States of America, the coverage of smart farming is 80% of all farms, while in Europe we have 24% number that, which is cutting off the supply and access of these people to the best markets, to access to a shared marketplace for their produce, which is of high quality and of course importance to the shared European marketplace. Smart villages. Digital villages are something which we're connecting to the access to basic services and to the capacity of people to receive equitable education, to receive access to healthcare, to receive to be able to monitor more closely the local elements of their digital marketplace. Why that's important? If you're working in the digital sphere, you know that the most difficult to get and most high value data is the data which you're getting in situ, which is much different and more accurate than the data you will be getting from satellite imagery and from distance learning modeling. As a part of that aspect, I was just invited to join the Citizen Control of Personal Data initiative within the European Smart Cities Marketplace. And I'm also leading a smaller subgroup on data valorization and getting people included in the best practices with their data. The main target of that initiative is for people to be able to take back control of their data, and for municipalities to be able to utilize that data for climate modeling, for high value opportunities for their communities, and not only the larger communities, but the smaller ones as well. Because as you saw on the previous slide, Europe is mostly rural, and these communities, which are the smaller communities, are actually the backbone of one of the most important aspects of our economic growth. So digital villages are the future, and I strongly believe that, because the crisis, we had to make allowances for green corridors. We had to make allowances for access to basic services for people, and I believe that if we continue on the road to better modeling of digital solutions, if we're able to include more people in that process and in the next wave of innovations, this will improve our future and we'll be able to deal with the challenges of climate change and future risks which we are facing better, and as a stronger, more united European continent. On the next slide, I'll say a couple more words about the Digital Innovations Hub in agriculture. So there is a very interesting discussion going on right now about breaking down silos between the digital world and the sustainability practices and the sustainability culture, which will be needed to achieve the sustainable development goals, which the UN has placed before us. Why it is important to include agriculture in that task? Agriculture is the single segment, perhaps maybe not the single segment, but the most important and significant segment in reaching our sustainability goals for the future, because it connects directly to biodiversity, to forestry, to land use, to waterways. If we make a matrix and we try to connect the sustainable development goals and the economic segment of agriculture, we will see that agriculture affects a number of these goals, and it isn't only life on land, it isn't only water and sanitation, it is also, it isn't only climate change, it is also all the different other aspects of economic growth. And Common Agriculture Policy envisages 250 billion in investments for the marketplace, 70 billion in investments for rural territories. But this isn't the only thing which is important. The data which we'll be able to gather and share within that common digital marketplace will be invaluable for the development of models for early warning systems concerning flooding, for security of food produce, for improvement of logistics channels, for the development of improved artificial intelligence modeling. And agriculture is going to play a very significant role in that, as agriculture is important for sustainability, for biodiversity, for monetization of our ecosystem services, for the important connections between different peoples of different areas, and for equitable growth of Europe, which includes not only the larger producers, but the smaller ones as well, and not only the central territories, but the ones which are dispersed and not that easy to connect to. So in that aspect, agriculture is probably the most important economic segment. And digital people, we tend to go where the impact of our services will be the most significant one. And I believe the digital services within agriculture are going to continue to grow and to define the economies of the future. And to finalize my short presentation, we have amazing perspectives before us. We are indeed moving towards a more digital, more advanced, more equitable Europe. We're indeed dealing with the crisis which is the first crisis of my generation of this magnitude with the coronavirus. We are constantly being flooded with new innovations in advanced digitalization, including artificial intelligence, including modeling, computer vision. We are developing new channels of trade. We are continuing to grow and to share our best practices. And we have before us the wonderful perspectives of the Green Deal. We have the opportunities to engage, and probably the most significant recovery plan, which is going to bring our economies into the next digital era. However, what is more important than the policy speeches and these perspectives that we have, which are written and envisaged within the strategic documents, is our capacity to cooperate, to exchange ideas, to connect with each other, to exchange best practices, and to share our knowledge. And this is something which I'm also extremely grateful for, is being able to provide some of that knowledge for the future generations and to perhaps improve and close some of the gaps which we currently have before us. On behalf of my friends from the Digital Innovations Hub in Bulgaria, from the Digital National Alliance, and I would like to thank you again for being here. And I hope that was a good presentation. If you want to ask me anything, please feel free to ask me anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica, for this beautiful presentation. And I have, how I was in the in the television program. I'm from the technical aspect. They are telling me that Maria Fatima Duarte is having some trouble in connecting, so perhaps she'd be late. So, in fact, I cannot see her in the participant list. So perhaps we can go forward and opening the debate, because actually both of your presentation have a lot of insight and insightful and interesting point on which we should further discuss, and I will be glad to hear your opinion on. If someone from the public, from the participants, wants to ask some question, please just feel free to raise your hand using the Zoom option, or write it in the chat, and we will ask it to the two speakers, David Cialetti and Monica Manolova. But before going there, I would have some question for you that are related actually to really connected with your speech, because the first one, perhaps David, is more is more directed to you, let's say, because you were mentioning the importance of the governance and this new concept of the agropolitana and the need of creating synergy between urban and rural areas. So what will be, in your opinion, one governance policies that could help modernize the agricultural sector, so going in this direction, smart farming, and at the same time be a way to connect with the urban area? So what could be one framework, one policy, one step ahead in this direction that the smart communities can take?
Yes. Well, firstly, I want to stress this is the result of a research which is still an ongoing research, so we don't have. But one aspect that we have started with is to understand what is the actual structure of the agricultural sector in this area, so Agropolitana, which is in fact the area between the provinces of Vicenza, Venice on the one side and Treviso to the other. It's quite a triangle. And we have seen that along with the absolute preeminence of small farming, which is up to 4 hectares, in fact, which is quite small. So this is, but we have 2 kinds of farmers. So the first one is they are very modern and up-to-date and generally speaking, young farmers that are already, in fact, included in some kind of associations that spontaneously tend in create this kind of synergic relation with the urban spaces. I put some examples, but there is no, well, there is a regional policy on it, but it has not affected them because they already started with this idea. And they are quite educated. Most of them have university diplomas. So it's a sector. Then we have another sector, which is, let's say, traditional agriculture that is mostly done and mostly done by professional farmers. And some of them, they don't even have their own land, but they rent plots around and they use it. So on the one side, we have very specialized agriculture. On the other side, we have a very traditional one, mostly focused on such crops as cereals, so corn, wheat, or soya, and this kind of things. So a policy could be in transforming this second or most traditional form of agriculture into something of more modern, viable from the economic point of view, but also from environmental and from the sustainability point of view. And we have a regional law that gives a framework about this, which is, we don't have the number of the law, but we have worked on it. It is how to transform regional agriculture up to 2025, so that there is this framework. And here you have, they have set of actions for let's say modernizing traditional farming. The very problem on this point, as far as we have seen so far, is that we don't have, at least in this area, many traditional farmers that are still owning or managing the land. And so they don't react because they're not quite interested in it. So this is, but, and I conclude, the fact that an ever more larger share of independent farmers are still spontaneously acting in this way. For example, they have a lot of initiatives for opening their farms to the people. They bring their products right in the cities. And this action makes the people aware of how agriculture is, how to have a viable agriculture from an economic point of view, but also natural, organic, or good products in the world is important. This is extremely viable. Another very interesting initiative that during the pandemic and still now, the Association of Small Farmers organized spontaneously to bring food to the people, to bring food produced within the area directly to the people. And that was a good success from an economic point of view, but also very good action to make people aware of the importance of agriculture, not of destroying fields to make new commercial areas, but keeping the fields, even if they are small and surrounded by urban constructions. So this is, I don't know if I did answer, but this is...
You did answer it in a way, and mostly you raised one important point that we'll stress a bit later, of this sort of more than a division is in a group. You said someone more younger farmer, updated and digital, some other more traditional group of farmer. That is also connected with one of the challenges of the near future, that is the generational renewal in the agricultural sector. But I saw Maria Fatima Duarte was able to connect, so perhaps we can come back on this point later and give her, if she is available, give her the floor for her presentation. Hi, Fatima.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Andy. I'm just going to share my presentation, if that is
Please.
okay.
Yes.
Just put here. Just outcome. Okay, I guess you are all seeing it, right? Is that okay, Andre?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can.
So good morning, everyone, and thanks, Andrew, for giving me the word. And thanks the organizing committee for this invitation and for making it possible for me to be presenting here and talking about my institution. And the talk I have here prepared is the contribution of CEBAL, which is an agriculture and agro-food biotechnology center of Alentejo in south of Portugal, and the contribution that this institution is giving to the territorial empowerment. I have this presentation divided in two parts. On the first 4 slides, I'm just briefly going to speak about the institutional itself, the institution itself, and then I'm going to give you 2 examples of how we are performing this empowerment. So CEBAL is a private non-profit research and development unit located in Beja in south of Portugal. We start our activity in 2008, so we are a 13 years old institution. And since 2020, so 1 year ago, we joined the largest research unit in the south of Portugal, denominated MED, the Mediterranean Institute for Agriculture, Environment and Development. We are a small, medium research team. We started in 2008 with 4 PhD researchers, and in the present we are 11 permanent PhD staff members working in different research lines, and also have the PhD students, research fellows, and obviously other staff members. In CEBAL, we don't have the problem of parity, as you can see by the picture, since either in science and in technology transfer areas, we are almost all women. So here we don't have that problem. When we are speaking about smart farming, obviously we are thinking about innovation, we are thinking about precision, agriculture, and sustainable growth. But we also have to think how the regions can attract or can potentiate new investment. And in our perspective, in CEBAL vision, this can be made using knowledge, using technology, in order to empower the citizens, the producers, the industries, the general stakeholders. And this is the resume of how we are organized. So we perform, the great majority of our research is based on the sustainable use of endogenous resources. And here we also include the resources that we can access from agro-industry and agroforestry. We develop bio-based products and solutions in the perspective of creating more value and therefore potentiating the bioeconomy at regional and national level. This is a way of potentiating the rural economy, but also to empower not only by the scientific knowledge, but also to the capability of knowing the technology, the producers and the industries. We are organized in 7 different research lines, where we go from agriculture to animal genomics, the agro-food valorization, the bioinformatics, and we also have a quite strong line towards the process engineering development in order to recovery bioactive compounds, in order to assess their biological activity and their potential use for products, for bio-based products, and also the wastewater treatment and valorization. We dedicate ourselves also to the technology transfer and the knowledge exchange, because as I already mentioned, we, in our opinion, this is a very important point to transfer the knowledge, to transfer the technology, but potentiating a relation, a close relation to the territory. And based on this, we are also able to better understand the biotech-based service which are needed and therefore drive the research towards that. As I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to give you 2 examples. And although they are interconnected, they represent by themselves different areas. And one is the water need. So everywhere, everyone nowadays need water. And this is a tremendous demand that we all have. And when we look to the possibility of using wastewaters, the agro-industry's wastewater as a source of valuable treated water, we also think on these wastewaters as a source of bioproducts. And if we can potentiate both from one side to treat water and from the other side to recover these byproducts, we are truly potentiating this water circular bioeconomy. And we have been developing for a while this strategy, this combined strategy. And for that, within these 4 areas that are here presented, the tomato, the olives, or the dairy sector and the meat production, today I'm going to speak about the dairy sector. So, and the work that we have been developing is focused or is based on membrane technology for sustainable valorization of these effluents. So Alentejo is the 2nd region in Portugal with more cheese makers. And this has impact in terms of rural economy, but it also has an environmental impact, because when we produce cheese, we also produce cheese wastewaters. And just as curiosity, for those that might not be completely aware of these quantities, more or less for each kilogram of cheese, we produce more or less 9 kilograms of residual cheese whey. And when we look to the chemical composition of cheese whey, we verify that the great majority, almost 92% of this is water. Then obviously we have lactose, we have protein. So if we can treat these wastewater, recovery, for example, lactose or protein, which can be used as bioproducts for other, or bioingredients, sorry, for other products development, we can have here an interesting solution. And the work that we have been developing using ultra and nanofiltration technology for the treatment of water from these type of industries allow us also to recover these sites, these other byproducts, let's say. Our question was, how can we deliver this technology to the territory, since we have the small industries, they will not be able to buy by themselves this technology. How can we go towards them? And we came up with this idea, which was to construct a membrane technology mobile unit. The image that you are seeing on your left side are the inside of the mobile unit. And basically what we are currently doing is we drive with the mobile unit towards different dairy industries. We go there, we treat, we recover the concentrates, which will be rich in these bioproducts. We create a higher scale because some of these producers are really tiny producers. And when we combine all these, we are able to develop process for the valorization. So we treat the water, we resolve the problem, and we try to valorize then the side streams. This is an example. The other example is a little bit different, although is interconnected because it relates also to the dairy sector. And it's related to cardoon or Cinera cardunclus economic valorization in rural areas. This plant is quite abundant in the Mediterranean basin, but in Portugal it has a high prevalence in the interior part of the country. And the flowers, as you can see here, this violet part of the flower is used in the dairy industry due to its proteolytic capacity to produce cheese. But when we look to the entire plant, we basically see much more. We see stalks, we see seeds, which are rich in fatty acids, and we see leaves. And our attention has been focused on leaves, not only because it's an incredible source of biomass, but also because leaves are a natural source of cis-terpene lactones. And these compounds are extremely interesting in the perspective of biological activity. Therefore, we have been focused on developing and optimizing and performing optimization of extraction technologies to be more green in order to obtain extracts, and with these extracts to develop bio-based products. Currently, we are developing solutions for human health applications, namely for chronic wounds, and also within the plant protection. As the example, it is presented here, the development of a bio-herbicide based on Cinera cardunclus leaves extracts. We are also much more interested in the genetic part, and therefore it is important to understand the genetic background of these plants in order also to identify plants with better productivity traits. And the reason why we do this in terms of the traits is because we have a close relation with the territory in terms of the territory and the producers in order to perform with them the experience in a close concept of living labs, where they hold experimental fields, they have the plant, they collect the flower, which is the the income or is the economic value that they have associated to the production, and we are able to study other aspects of the plant. So basically here, an example of how we are potentiating the carbon circular bioeconomy. And with this, I'm about to finish, and I hope to show here in these brief examples that we are trying to run against this paradoxical division of the country where we have, yes, it's true that Alentejo is a low density region, but by promoting this development of science and promoting the fixation of highly qualified human resources capable of developing new knowledge, new technology, we hope to unbalance this. So thank you once again, and I will be much happier to take any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima, for the presentation. Thank you for being able to connect and do it live just in time.
Thank you.
We were started talking and taking some questions from and I remind the participants that if they want, they just can raise their hand. So we will unmute you so that you will be able to ask the question yourself, or otherwise you can use the chat and we will make this question to the speakers for you. Before we started to talk with David on the best policies and how to support this digital transformation and smart farming, and this point of the differences of more traditional against more digital practices is now in agriculture were highlighted. And I would like to ask exactly also to Fatima, to Monica, what will be to David, of course, how we can best support the farmer, mainly the small and family-driven farms that are the vast majority in Europe. As with Monica's presentation, we noticed that Fatima stressed, and also David in the Padua region is the same as in Alentejo. So how we can support the small family-driven farms to adopt this new digital and smart solution. If you have knowledge of some good practices in your region or in general, what could be a good way to approach this transformation for them? I don't know who want to start, or I'd say your Monica, Fatima, perhaps Monica. Yes, please.
Yes, so I can start to continue from where David left off. I think that there are these thresholds for by 2025, we're going to have, that's a goal for the European Union, to have 100% broadband coverage for the entirety of the Union, which is going to improve by a large extent the capacity of smaller farmers and smaller villages to connect to the digital market, as most peripheral areas still don't have that great connectivity, which has presented some issues during the COVID lockdowns and needed to be addressed. And also for agricultural practices, thank you, Fatima, for the brilliant presentation. I think that there are some lovely people in the Bulgarian Digital Hub that would like to meet you as well. I think that for organic farmers, there is also a threshold for growth for organic developments in the future. I think that the percentage of organic farmers in Europe right now is about 7%, and it's going to be, and the target by 2025 is for that percentage to grow over 20%. So we are moving towards sustainable farming and towards digital inclusion. And for the majority of the digital solutions, I'm happy to say that for the market is developing in a way such as it is more inclusive now than it has ever been, because people are able to afford smaller devices at a cheaper price that are able to provide them with additional information, with open APIs that could provide them with information about the water resources, about irrigation practices. They can get all of that information and improve their produce. And I think that it isn't a difficult buy-in to be able to do that. And also for a smaller farmer, for a family-centered farm, this is a huge improvement against prior generations where it was a bit more difficult to get into agriculture. Great practices in Bulgaria for traditional farming. I just received the other day an invite to provide some consultation to people that are managing 6,000 hectare farms that are traditional farmers, but are interested in improving their produce so that it's less of a strain on their environment. And I think that it is an agreement for everyone, and mostly farmers, who are the people that value their natural ecosystems best. And that's true all of the farmers. It doesn't matter how digitally connected they are. They all value the ecosystems which they're generating their products from. And that's a wonderful agreement to have for the entirety of Europe. And it's even better now that we can provide these services at a cheaper price point for people so that they can join and they can be able to monetize even the smallest sets of data which they're using. For a small farmer, they can also be included in the digital marketplace as well. So it's two entry points into two marketplaces. They can enter the traditional agricultural marketplaces. They can join farmers markets, and they can promote their produce. And then at the same time, they're able to join the growing digital ecosystem of Europe with in situ data, with valorization of their data, which is going to become even more relevant in the coming years. So I think that's about it from me.
Thank you, Monica. Fatima wants to build on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have, for sure I don't have as much as Monica had, but I just would like to bring up 2 points. One is in terms of the reality. Yes, it's true that more and more we see that this young generation being involved in agriculture. And when we talk with them and when we meet them, we verify that it's true, they are completely into the digital area, right? So basically they have belonged to different communities, they are all interconnected, they easily perform, share, it's for them is easy. I mean, everything happens very fast. And for them being here or being in Lisbon or being in other city around the world will be exactly the same, because they don't have issues with speaking other language. So yes, we have that reality. And yes, it's true that reality is completely into the digital area. But we also have the more older farmers that do not have this way of seeing things, and they are not that much included, because for them sometimes even to use a cell phone might be a problem. I mean, and this is true, this is the reality. I mean, I have producers that we follow up, and when we want to speak with them, we need to go there, we need to speak face to face, because they will not check, if they don't have email, they will not pick up the cell phone. And for me, this is something which, when I think about them, I'm not sure how can we bring them to this digital time. And sometimes I'm thinking maybe their sons or their grandkids, they will be able to do it. But I don't know, because yes, it's true that in this region we are demographically low, and it's not that easy to attract. And this is a battle that we have to gain. That is bring new generations to live here and to keep living here. That is another thing, right? So yes, I just would like to share that from one side, I know really nice examples, which people that are completely into it, but then I also recognize these other cases that they are not at all involved in digital times. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatima. And I mean, from my experience in Italy, what I see the trends in the past years was this return to the to the field. You know, just as Monica also was saying, along a lot of young people going back to the farm, let's say, to the agricultural sector, to the rural lands. And sometimes they were also young that didn't have a family background of agriculture, or were younger people coming from rural areas, fathers were farmers or whatever, they leave to go live, they went abroad, study, also sometimes different kind of education, but then come back to the land. And this kind of group is more open to the digital innovation, to the digital aspect, to these whole farming, smart farming methodologies. They are much more sensitive to follow this evolution. But on the other hand, they sometimes face some other barriers to access to the land, access to the credit to start a business there. So, and they lack, or they don't have yet, that experience that the traditional farmer can have, and that knowledge of the lands and the weather of the region. So how we can support this cross-generational learning, cross-generational exchange of knowledge that you were talking before, and contribute from one side to renew the sector, to the generational renewal of the sector, from the other side also contributing to the vast sustainable growth of the region itself. So what will be a way to support this, this exchange between these two groups that we were now talking about? And if you have some...
yes, if
David,
I can,
yes.
just a
Please.
couple of words. I think that our approach should be different in relation to the geographic area we're working in, because on the one side, it is, we are doing this study to understand how a specific territory changed and is changing. So it is clear that in these conditions, you have a juxtaposition, which is a social, a territorial juxtaposition, but that's a social juxtaposition of urban and farming area. And I would myself have some kind of difficulties in classifying people as farmers or as inhabitants of cities or of little cities, because there is such a contiguity that this difference, it exists, but less and less. It exists as an heritage of former generation. But in fact, in the material world, it exists less and less. And this is one point. And of course, you can find, and then you have other aspects as the contiguity with other works or people doing other works, even within family. So, and this is one point. And the second, in fact, the main problems, as we are doing some statistics about this, one of the main problems of farmers that want to continue farming is to keep the land, because the land is being transformed and more urbanized. This is what we call soil consumption. And we have a regional law defending, let's say, soil, but in fact, it doesn't work. You have economic mechanisms behind it, but this goes behind our topic. So I don't see, and I haven't seen a problem of digitalizing agriculture, which is already digitalized and already digitalized even in the production process, in fact. But there is a problem in preserving agriculture for the future if we think that this is a value in this area. And of course, in other areas, we have other realities and other situations. So this is why I think the general approach should be differentiated in relation to the territory you are working on. So this.
Thank you, David. Yeah, it's true. If I understand well your point, exactly, is there is always less and less differences between urban and rural area. From one side, it's a problem, soil consumption and urbanization. From the other side is a positive aspect, because it's difficult to, I mean, that's the two, what in the past could be two kind of people, urban and rural, they all have the same knowledge, the same access to digital aspect, to innovation, and to and opportunities in general. You know, if Monica or Fatima agree with this point, or if they have some adding comment to build on it, Monica.
I completely agree with David. I think that regionalization is extremely important when it comes to both both agriculture and digitalization and the levels of it. And it also relates to the demographics of the different people that are involved in the different aspects of agriculture as well. I think that when we are analyzing different areas, we should focus on both the on all the strengths which territories possess when it comes to agricultural developments, because even as we develop these international initiatives, these projects that relate to different areas in different regions, we are still able to find the bridges between us. Like, I was developing a proposal several months ago, and I noticed that there is a connection between wine producers from Bulgaria, from Germany, from Italy, from Spain, and from Portugal, of course, because the different assortments and the way in which they're treated may be different, and the approaches are also a bit different, and some are using digitalization and some are still more traditional in their approach to wine. But when it comes down to the connection to the land, to the appreciation of the product, and to exchanges, it is all shared, and it's wonderful to see that, because it's not only product, it's culture, it's heritage, it's the way that we connect with each other, and it's wonderful to see. So perhaps a goal that we should pose before ourselves is to create like a shared marketplace where we are able to exchange best practices and make it a digital sort of connect, make it the way we have connected thus far throughout the COVID lockdowns, because it's unique, the ways in which we have managed to connect despite everything, despite all this stuff that is going on outside in the world, all the connections and friendships which we have made. Perhaps digital is only one of the bridges by which we manage to connect, and the other one is agriculture, and another one is the more scientific approach to it. But at the end of the day, the added values which we produce by combining all of our approaches far outweigh all the weaknesses which we possess. Because I think that for such a shared marketplace, such a connection to the products, such a connection to the ways in which we present ourselves to each other and are able to exchange in a more cultural aspect, I think that this is a way to include the older generations as well within the digital sphere. This is a way to include different people from different backgrounds as well, because they all appreciate this. So you can go to a farm which is situated somewhere outside the city, to an elderly generation producers, and you can present them with a wine bottle or with something else, and we can connect with, and you can connect with them, and you can show them and display to them this marketable approach where they can reach people from all parts of Europe, and they're able to see the benefits of their product. And I think that people appreciate that, despite all the differences and all the different approaches that we have. So it's exciting times, it's wonderful, and it's great that it is only now beginning for the EU.
And if I can, I just wanted to add something, but I completely agree with what was previously said. But this topic that Monica raised about the good practice share based on the product, I think it's a great opportunity, because as my experience, I have observed that when it came to the topic of discussing about a product, let's say discuss about a cheese. I mean, you when you know what you are discussing in terms of, or either because you are the cheese maker, or because you are the cheap milk production, or because you are the one that is going to sell the cheese, or because you are scientifically related to the area. I mean, you basically have a share point, and you can speak, you can share, you can discuss around this. And yes, it's true that I believe this is a way of combining ideas, of sharing in a completely free way, because the people give the knowledge that they have for free. I mean, this is something extraordinary that people, when they are sharing this type of knowledge, they do it for free. They do it because they want the improvement of the product, let's say, in this way. I don't know if you are understanding what I'm trying to address, but the topic here is the good practice when they are shared in the base of the products. In my opinion, it can really function and can be really a way of combining generations, of breaking down these issues of digitalization, or because the people really get together for that. And yeah, so I just wanted to leave this opinion.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Fatima. I understand that Davide Murgese has a question.
Yeah,
Please.
Thank you. Thanks to all the people for the presentation. That they were very interesting, and based on what you all said, I had this question in my mind. That is, how do you consider the cost of digitalization in agriculture, where in part you all responded to this question, but I think that this is a very important topic, because margin in agriculture are very small, especially with small farmers, and so it is very strategic, in my view, to develop services that are affordable for all the people, effective in the same manner, to allow a competitive and a fair process for all the actors involved. As a digital transition could lead to a more, how can I say, unbalanced situation between large producer and small producer. And in the light of what Monica said, that farmlands as a whole are one of the largest land use in Europe, and these areas are strategic for several aspects related to the challenges that we will have to cope in nowadays and in the future. I think that it is important to guarantee the participation of all the actors that can bring a contribution to the management of rural areas, also through digitalization.
Should I reply to that? Yeah, of course. So I completely agree with you. It's extremely important that the access to services is equal and possible for everyone that wants to join in, which is one of the targets of the Digital Innovations Hub in Bulgaria. I think that it is important to have all of the digital providers and all of the entrepreneurs at a single place where the price points are going to be regulated in a very market-oriented way, so that you get to get different services at even a lower cost for access. But then there are a lot of open source solutions which a modern farmer can use that are not that much dependent on a price of entry. I think that it's a practice which is growing within Europe to be able to utilize geospatial technologies for improvement of efficiency of different territories. And small farmers are also going to be able to benefit from that. The Copernicus GeoService, or the other open source solutions which are available, the different APIs which are growing, and they provide excellent solutions as well. And also, as a part of the citizen control of personal data within the Smart Cities Marketplace, I want to focus mostly on that aspect of digitalization, of inclusion of different people, of equality. And that is also the goal of the Digital National Alliance in Bulgaria, to include more people, to make digital solutions accessible for everyone. And I'm happy to say that from the digital point of view, it's not that difficult of a task to achieve. It may appear so within the administrative, within the bureaucratic, within local governments even, but for the digital aspect, I think that we are growing into more of a digital society as we move along, and people are getting acquainted with these open source solutions that can help them get involved more freely into the exchange of both better practices and quality solutions, because quality improves as more people contribute. And I also believe that smaller farmers can also contribute a lot to these solutions, because for a smaller farmer, they can provide in situ information which could be utilized for validation of different climate models, for improvement of modeling for waterways, for provision of solutions at the local area. And they could also be included in the governance of these unique ecosystems in a very informative way, in a way which makes a huge impact. Because it's not only the pure monetization which is important, it is also the value of the information. As I wouldn't want to use quotes, but cost is what you pay, value is what you get. And each data point has its own cost, but each data point has its own value as well. And right now, as we're moving towards the next generation of systems, towards artificial intelligence, towards machine learning, we have a lot of value out there for everyone to be able to benefit from. And that value could be utilized for more sustainable ecosystems, for more interconnected networks, and for more synergies with all types of producers within the marketplace.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Davide, for the question. I saw in the chat more a comment than a question from Matteo Bartolini. Right. Young farmers who want to establish in rural areas not only want to be sustainable from economic point of view, but they need same social services that their colleagues have in urban areas. That's why smart communities could help to create a new development. Well, thank you, Matteo, for this comment in support of smart communities. Actually, it's one of the aspects, the main aspect of this summit is to try to develop the smart communities and to understand how they better can support not only rural, but also urban areas and European citizens as a whole. I'd like to build a bit on what Monica was saying about the data and the importance of, you were mentioning it before, to give people take back control of this data. And this aspect of to who belongs the data and who can have access to them is quite important from both from a personal privacy point of view and for a security point of view. What are your comment or your suggestion on this aspect?
Yes, so information and data privacy is extremely important. We already have the GDPR in place in Europe, and as we're moving towards more a digital economy, I believe that importance is going to continue to grow. What we already have is a lot of data out there in the world. Whatever social network service you're using, whatever you are included in, your presence online is already being data mined and utilized for marketing and for all types of services, which you may not even be aware of that are happening in the background. What the goal of taking back control of your data is to include people in the process of what their information is being utilized for. So, for example, if you're a part of a smaller village, if you're part of a circular economy establishment, you can provide some information that could be connected to the network of your local government so that they can improve on local services. You could connect to the produces which you're providing and to follow the value chain and where they're being sold. And you can see that information, and you can also support your neighbors. So you're being anonymized. That's not a question at all. You're being anonymized. Your blockchain is being utilized in some fashion. I know that there are a lot of targeted projects which are going on right now, which are piloting blockchain technologies in that aspect. So you're providing your information. It could be directly monetized, or you could follow up on how it is being used. Because right now there is a lot of information out there, and people are being dubious because they aren't well aware of how that information is being used. What we want to do is to include people in that process, to make sure that they know when you're providing data about the waterways and conditions of the territory which you're occupying, that information is being used for the improvement of climate models, for the improvement of scientific studies, for the improvement of local governance practices. It is going to be another bridge between people, because you can have two neighboring farms and they could go at war about the fertilizers they're using, because the fertilizers they're using on one end of the river will be affecting ecosystems on the other end. So these people could also communicate with each other better by providing some information, like we're using these and these services at some instance in time, and we are collaborating and we're exchanging practices as well on how to best use them, and the seasonalities of these services as well. So privacy is extremely important. It's something which should be respected. It's important to be compliant with the regulations. It's important to analyze data so that it's not biased and it doesn't affect people in negative ways. But it is also important to include people in the process of data valorization and data usage, because right now they're not included as much as they should be. So inclusion could also relate to digital services and to the best value practices for sustainability.
Thank you, Monica, for the comment. And I would like to start on the, of course, we agree on the importance of privacy and respecting all the ethical aspects of collecting data to avoid bias, to avoid stigmatization and use of them. But I'd like to stress one point you raised with that was the empowerment of the citizen, meaning through the data they can, or at least should be able to support in the governance, to have more informed participation in the democratic level. In this, I would like to call in David, and with this, because it stuck in my mind, the idea of the agropolitana. So how do you see the citizen participation in this new form of governance, and what could be the role of the data collected in the field?
Well, Agropolitana does not exist, but in our minds. So it's of course, it's an idea to describe a territory. So it has, first of all, a territorial and study value, an analysis value. I don't know, because we didn't work really on data collection and data management. So but what I have seen is that this exchange of information between farmers is very much done by at association level, because we have, for example, this very powerful association of small farmers, which has a lot of initiatives, and among them data collecting and data transferring. And I have seen it both for production practices than for marketing practices. So when we have to produce something and address to a certain markets, they have this data transfers. But I repeat, I didn't work on it because we had another approach. We just wanted to understand how to manage this territory and how it is possible. And in this, we had a little bit more insight on how more than data, information and transfers between farmers and the other in this contiguity situation. And they have developed and even very concrete initiatives to make the people aware that farming is important. And I had some references on it during the presentation. But I think that this is more information that data managing, as we have seen. So the approach is a little bit different, and it's difficult for me to answer to this question, because in fact, we didn't tackle this problem, but the problem of making different realities existing, avoiding that, because this is another point, avoiding that this kind of agriculture within a urbanized vast area disappears.
Okay, thank you, David, and sorry for if I misunderstood, but you stressed again, and this is a concept that come out different time during our last more or less hour conversation, this exchange of knowledge between farmer and in general between citizens, both at a local level and before we are talking about a transnational level. So also how, my question could be, how the different communities could, how this exchange at transnational level could bring some added value also in the local. So if it could be of some benefit for the farmer, and what could be a good way for smart communities to approach and to foster this exchange of knowledge in the two levels, local and European.
Well, again, as far as I've seen, and again, we have a difficulty, and I have a difficulty here in identifying really a farming community. This is the first point, but we have, for example, most of those initiatives that I've referred to are funded by the European Union. And if we go back to the slides, but it's useless now, you have the log of the European Union, which is clear that if there is some kind of exchange of information, of projects, and even of an idea of building a different farming. But if in certain places, and I'm sure we have farming communities, here we have in this territory communities, even people farming in the hills around, so outside the city, in the hills around Padova, around Vicenza, they're often living in the city, or they live there because they want to do it. There is not this separation, and we have seen empirically, so doing empirical research, that quite often within the same family or the same group of people living together, as you want to put it, you have people doing different jobs. So this is the peculiarity of this region, I guess. And probably if we go southern, where you have extensive agriculture, or northern in the hills and in the mountains, where you have also agriculture, we have different realities, complete and different problems. Here, the most acute problems is not as much having informations or exchanging informations, is much more preserving the status quo, preserving the land, preserving the area we are living in. This is the problem is much more soil consume and the price of land than having information or access to technology.
Okay, thank you. And Monica, Fatima, do you have the same experience from your territory, from your regional area?
Yeah, I mean, David brought up here an idea that is that I share, because yes, it's true that in this region we have a great part of the territories with the extensive agriculture systems, but we also have familiar or at least lower dimension agriculture systems. And when it comes to this topic of technology transfer, and it has been a while since we are working on this for the territory, what we observed is that when you have a project, when you are financed, when it's driven, let's say, by other inputs, you can show, or at least the people wanted to see, want to participate. In general, is for free, and they are interested in. And you basically can point more stakeholders. You get more people involved, and so on. But then, when it comes to the point that the things need to go by themselves, right? I mean, you basically point, or you leave the seed, and then you want the plant to grow. And here, my experience is that when you have these small farmers, and let's keep this nomenclature of small versus big farmers, when you have these small farmers, and when they are engaged to whatever you are transferred to them, or solving a problem, or whatever it is, I mean, sometimes they really have difficulties on going through it, either because they don't have the knowledge to follow. And when I'm speaking about knowledge, I'm speaking about practical knowledge sometimes. I mean, they don't have idea what we are talking about in terms of solutions. So they have more difficulties to make them happening, right? Versus when we are speaking about big farmers, that in general, or quite often, they contract research to solve the problem, right? So they have 2-3 issues. I mean, or either they are developing by themselves, or they're contracting somewhere. And in this interconnection, I mean, they completely know the language of the problem, right? So they know what they are asking, and they understand what is being replied. And therefore, sometimes it's easier, and is the technology by itself goes, if it's like a high-tech process, I mean, you see incredible things happening like this, right? Because they wanted both sides are able to understand each other, and things just move forward. When is with the small farmers, and I have this experience already. I mean, it's really, you have to pay more attention in the meaning of the success of this implementation. I mean, once it's implemented, yes, it can be of great interest, and sometimes even give you more feedback, right? Because the solution brings you much more other solutions, let's say in this way, but it's difficult to implement it. And getting back to the question, how are these transfer actions happening? If there is not a net going with them for the small farmers, it might be difficult. And in my experience, the municipalities here might have a very quite interesting role. I mean, they can be more side to side following. They have different mechanisms. They have people dedicated to this economic rural development. So sometimes it's not really, we have to look to this scenario and try to understand what are the stakeholders in which you should dedicate and try to transfer as much as you can for them to have the capability when it's needed to then to disperse to the territory. Because I think it's not that easy when we are speaking about small farmers that want to be more high-tech, or they want to have access to certain technology, but they might not be able to do it because they might not be able to understand, or at least to follow the procedures to certain implementation and so on. So this is, at least with my experience, is what I'm observing, and I think it's interesting and is a reality. Yeah.
Hey, thank you. We are going towards the conclusion because I believe in 5 minutes the room will close. So if you, Monica, you have a last words to say before closing, or we can go just 1 minute each to conclude this session. Just one minute last comment or phrase, sentences you want to leave. I will start with Monica, then David, then Fatima, and then we'll close.
Thank you very much. I would like to once more thank our hosts from Neteo, my friends from Iradier, for the kind invite. I would like to continue talking to you, exchanging with you, and if you have any ideas on projects, concepts, or anything else which you want to exchange together, I'm of course open to it. Please feel free to connect with me. It was lovely being here and huge honor, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
So, of course, thank you for having invited me. That was a pleasure to discuss with you, and it's a very profitable discussion, in my opinion. So we should, yes, try to keep in contact each other, and then eventually. I think that this is a very interesting topic, is to understand what kind of, in fact, of data in this sense of informatics support farmers do really need in the different contexts. And I think that we all of three have worked in quite different contexts. So this is a very important aspect, but that was very interesting. So thank you very much for, yes, for having invited me and for being here.
Well, thanks for this invitation. I will be available for any collaboration in further conversation, because this is a really interesting topic. And when we speak about this smart specialization of the regions, and when we speak about the smart farming in this topic, it's really needed to have other regions experience and to share and to see how happen in other places, to understand how can happen in our region. So the sharing, and as David said, is true. I guess we have different experience by our regions, and that's for sure can be a good thing, right? So thank you once again for this invitation, and thanks for my colleagues.
Well, thank you all for your beautiful presentation and speeches and the availability to talk with us and to have this discussion. It was a real pleasure to listen to you, to learn from you. And so thank you also to all the participants, both in the room or the one who are following us on YouTube or on the Summit website. And well, we'll see you on another table in another session of this summit, if you are available and willing to participate. Otherwise, we'll keep in touch. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice
Bye-bye.
day.
Okay, bye-bye.